January is known as the month of doors, named for the Roman deity Janus, who represented doors, openings and closings, or better put, beginnings and endings. Out with the old and in with the new, and this month we have some very new content for you, from a new top 10 list presented by an awesome podcaster, to a fantastic interview with a UK-based science fiction author, to a great new set of writing tips for our continued discussion about writing poetry. I'm your host, Garrett K. Jones. Join me on the first video of 2024. Happy New Year and welcome back to The Right Way, where we talk book recs, author interviews, and creative writing tips. If you haven't already done so, please make sure to click subscribe and hit the bell for notifications on new videos, just like this one. I have a great episode for you as we phase into the new year, but before we get into the details, I have a few announcements that I'd like to share with you. So first up, not only is today the monthly episode, it is also the author meet and greet at the Hanford branch of the Kings County Library. I will be down in the library with copies of all my books to sign and sell from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now, if you're local to the area, come on down. I would love to see you, talk with you, and just connect with more people from my community. Second, another big announcement that I have is that I have been in talks with the library regarding the writing workshops that I hosted in the last year and going through those in the past, and about scheduling new ones coming up in the future. Now, I don't have any dates as of the recording of this video, but I am waiting to hear back on all of that. But they are going to happen, and I'll have those details for you as soon as I possibly can. For this month's top 10 list, I have invited podcast host Stehpanie Galan of the Reading Sirens podcast as my guest host. I had the distinct pleasure of being featured in an episode of Stephanie's show alongside her co-host Heather, who will be featured as next month's guest host. I hope Steph's book recs catch your attention.
Hey everyone, Stehpanie here from the Reading Sirens. I was asked by Garrett to compile a list of top 10 reads of, well, he didn't say 2023, but because I love so many books, I had to make the choice for myself to do a top 10 reads of 2023. So Sky McDonald's The Not So Nice Girl, very 80s vibes. It follows Eleanor, and it's, in the summer of 86, Nashville. She is a very Spitfire character, and I tend to love Spitfire characters, so I really enjoyed reading this one. Another book that I really loved this year was Not Another Sarah Halls by Haley Newland, another indie author. This one was part thriller, part supernatural or paranormal. It follows Autumn, who is this teenage girl in a town where a lot of other teenagers are going missing. She notices some changes in her best friend that she's had forever, and she is starting to have these nightmares or premonitions. And I mean, you call them whatever you want to call them, but it was It was such a great read. Another book that I truly loved and isn't in the horror genre is The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And this one is a sci-fi, but it also has historical elements in there. It pretty much follows Carlota, who is the daughter of Dr. Moreau, and it's actually set in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. I mean, it's a historical. So there was a lot of happenings between the French and the Mexican people, the Mayan people, and all of that was happening in the background of this story being told. You follow Carlota's perspective as she is trying to figure out how to help her father kind of keep his experiments going and keep making profit out of what he's doing. Okay, next I'm going to do a book from my preferred genre. This is Sleeping Celeste by Elena K. Drex. It's a gothic horror novella, and it follows Marie and her struggle with grief and guilt over her daughter's death. It is like a mix of The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe and Pet Sematary. Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell, which was another horror read. This one was very different because I had never read a horror book based off of like Native American tales and or legends, and it was one of those books that as I was reading it, I had to stop and take a break because I was actually getting creeped out. I don't want to give too much away, but there's a cabin in the middle of nowhere surrounded by snow. Power goes out, couple is in there. There's stuff from the past that they didn't know about, and so this whole time they're trying to get rid of this entity that is following them. I was so freaked out because it's one of those that mimics. So it's an entity that mimics others, and so you have to read it. This one is another one out of my norm, and it's Ana Maria and the Fox by Liana de la Rosa. This book is a historical romance, so picture Bridgerton, but it follows the Luna sisters, which is a trio of Mexican sisters that are escaping war in Mexico, and they are sent to London. Another one also in the horror genre is Grey Noise by Marcus Hawk. Just check out that cover, guys. Like, how freaking creepy in like the best way possible is that? Am I right? This one is a whole experience in itself. It follows Evan. I always just call him Gray, but it follows Evan as he starts up Rewind Video, which is like obviously by now has to be retro, right? So he starts up this video store, and his hope for it is that other people are gonna like flock to it and bask in the nostalgia that it is. He finds this big old tube TV in the middle of nowhere that's just free, and as soon as he turns it on, the dread happens. The Hive of Blood series. So Hive of Blood is book 1, Hive of Desire is book 2, and this is a dark fantasy series, and it follows Nathaniel and his experiences with the LeSeverins in Novatheria, which is this made-up land. And this book is by these books are by Chantal Brunton. It's really easy to follow. So for those of you who are like, oh, a fantasy is like, you know, gonna be so tough to follow. Like, how am I gonna pronounce these names? Blah, blah, blah. not with this one. This one is really, it's a dark fantasy, it is, and there are elements of a fantasy.
A big thank you goes out to Stehpanie for being this month's guest host. If you're interested in picking up one of the books mentioned in her segment, you can find that list of titles and their ISBN numbers down in the video description. SM Warlow is incredibly knowledgeable when it comes to developing science fiction stories. When I was recruiting guests for author awareness, he was one of the first to sign up for Season 6. I hope you enjoy my conversation with him. All right, well, Simon, thank you for joining me on the show. How you doing?
Oh, good, thank you. It's
good.
Quite early in the morning here. I have my coffee, so
yeah, it's super early in the morning here because there's an 8-hour time difference. It's midnight here and 8 a.m. there. Okay, so tell me about your work and what you write.
Broadly speaking, science fiction. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. But I'm very sort of big on sort of huge space operas, and the concept I've been working on for the last few years now is sort of a bit of a mishmash of things. So sort of Star Wars, Firefly, bit of Mass Effect, maybe The Expanse, if you really want to get a bit technical about it. And really that's sort of my main driver really, is to sort of get really interesting science fiction out there that maybe doesn't conform to the sort of generic stuff that's out there today that we see everywhere. So I mean, I'm trying to sort of build a nice big universe that people enjoy.
That's awesome. So how did you get into writing? Was this something that you've always wanted to do, or was it something that you just kind of stumbled upon one day and you're like, this seems like fun?
So I mean, with this series, I had the concept about 15, 16 years ago. Well, you're in that 20, so probably about 15, 16 years ago now. I had the concept, but I never did anything with it. It was one of those sort of things like, life gets in the way. At the time I would have been in sort of in higher education, trying to find my feet into a career. So it was one of those things that I just put off for a long time. And then it sort of got to a point about sort of 6 years ago, where I just sort of said, look, nobody's going to write this for me. I don't feel like the industry's going to churn out this concept that I've got. So the only person who can do that is me. So I've been working on this now for about 6 years, 2 books in, but plans laid and ready to go.
And what's now the books are in a series, correct?
Correct, yeah. So the series is under the sort of tagline of Tales of the Phoenix Titan. Book 1, Heritage, came out about 18 months ago, and book 2, Invidious, came out in April. As
a writer, you draw from inspiration. You mentioned Star Wars. You've mentioned Firefly, which Browncoats Unite.
Ooh. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
So what are some other inspirations that you have? Do you draw from film, music, nature? What is it that inspires you to write?
So I suppose if we sort of just speak very lightly on on sort of one of the key concepts of the book. So Heritage, the first book in the series. As the title implies, it's got stuff to do with kind of people's backgrounds, that sort of thing. And in that book, first sort of few chapters, you meet a secondary character who is distantly linked or distantly related to sort of a forerunner species who sort of shaped the universe but disappeared mysteriously. That will trope, but she's effectively related to those. And for me, that inspiration sort of came from actually a family story, wherein sort of like during the sort of latter years of his life, my grandfather mapped out his family tree, and he had a very odd sort of parental background himself. So my great grandparents or great grandparents, their background was very sort of disjointed, and there was never kind of any clarity about sort of family mysteries, that sort of thing. So he, before he died, he really went mad and mapped out our entire family. And at the time, found some really interesting things. So like we had a relative who was executed for stealing a sheep. We had sort of these guys who migrated between Ireland and the UK and Wales and sort of all over the place. But the big thing he found was that he was distantly related to Cary Grant, the actor, which was really strange because the thing in the media, like you see, he has some Irish family or something like that, but he didn't really talk about it. And it turns out they were sort of like cousins or something like that. That was sort of the odd link. So that was sort of one of the inspirational sort of things for one of the key concepts of this story. But then there's so much great stuff out there. So I mean, Gareth L. Powell, who's very active in the local sort of sci-fi community, absolutely love
to interview him on the show a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
yeah. Embers of War was excellent. Those 3 books were just so good, and the new stuff's great as well. But I mean, Embers of War, I don't know what it was at the time. I was commuting a lot. They're so good, man. Like
it's so good.
I was commuting like all the time, so I remember smashing through those 3 books during my commute, and it was just the highlight. It was so good, man.
What has been one of the hardest parts or the biggest challenges in creating your work?
The challenges. I mean, obviously, self-publishing comes with its own sort of hurdles you have to get through. So, I mean, I guess there's sort of that fear of kind of handing over the work and sort of saying, hey, this is the line in the sand I'm going to draw here. That first draft is rough, man. Like, you go past the first draft, you edit, you give it to a reader, you edit it again, and you go through that iterative cycle every time. That's quite tough. But to get, especially with the first book, I think with the first book, it was really hard to kind of let that go because I've been holding on to that for about 3 years or something crazy like that. So to actually let that go and be like, hey, this is it. That was tough. I guess then the second big one is sort of the marketing, really. There's a lot of tools at the disposal of self-publishing, in self-published authors, and it can come in the form of something really basic like Amazon ads or Facebook Meta stuff. But then there's a lot of I don't know the right word for it. There's a lot of accounts that you get people messaging you saying, "Oh, hey, we can help promote your book," or this sort of stuff, and it's trying to sort of mine for gold almost. You sort of you have to find the right sources of promotion, really. I mean, I tend to stick with sort of the known marketing things that sort of Mark Dawson and then sort of those sort of guys talk about, which is the meta advertising, the sort of the recognized blogs, podcasts, all that sort of thing. But it's a real minefield when you get into how to market your work, really.
So that brings me to the next question. If you could give any advice to other would-be authors out there, what would you say to them?
I mean, I know there's this sort of debate about plotters and pantsers. It's sort of like as a sort of a way to navigate the writing of a book. I mean, I think that's besides the point, if I'm honest with you. So going back to Gareth L. Powell, he wrote About Writing, the advice guide. One of the best taglines in that book is just fucking write it, which is so true. Like, as writers, we're our own worst enemy in this regard, and we get stuck in like loops of putting things off and that sort of thing. And I, for one, I'm a walking example of that because I put off the writing of these books for like a decade and a half. So, I think, just write the thing, even if it's terrible. Like, once you've done that first draft, you can rake over, you can edit, you can change things. But once you've got your thoughts down on paper and it's there, you can really sort of bring home your book and get it done. So yeah, absolutely write the thing, like sit down, write. And I guess the other thing, just get to know like other writers in your community, be it like local or on like sort of Facebook groups or Instagram or whatever social media platform you use. Like, I think it's a really great community to sort of be a part of because authors tend to want to see other authors succeed.
How else are you going to get people to help you succeed, without helping them succeed? It's reciprocal.
Yeah, and that's right. I mean, even sort of something just as basic as sort of beta readers, when you're going through that editing process, like other authors are really good to cast an eye.
So Simon, we're coming to the end of the interview here. How can people get a hold of you? How can they get a hold of your books?
Yeah, sure.
What's the best venue for that?
So I guess sort of the main locale for books for me is Amazon. I'm exclusive to Amazon Publishing, so both books are available on paperback, Kindle Unlimited, and then the audiobook is also available on Audible and iTunes. And then the best place to find me really at the moment is my Instagram page, which is SM Warlow _author.
Awesome. Well, Simon, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
If you're interested in picking up copies of Mr. Swallow's work or connecting with him through social media, you can find all of those links down in the video description. Welcome back for our deep dive discussion into poetry. Last month we discussed rhyming, which forces poets to focus on how syllable and word sounds within the structure of their poetic lines. We also discussed the 6 types of rhyme schemes that are commonly used when writing this form of poetry. This month we are going to discuss lyrical poetry, which often goes hand in hand with rhyming poetry. Lyrical poetry, like odes, gets its history from ancient Greece. These were song-like poems written specifically to the stringed instrument known as the lyre. Lyre! Whoa, do you smell burning? Oh crap, my pants! Ah! Guys, you know what? I have told you before, stop letting pyromaniacs into the studio, okay? Sheesh. Anyway, it is from the from that instrument that we get the term lyrical. Many modern songs take stylistic inspiration from those older forms. Lyrical poetry, in the modern sense, however, focuses on expressing personal emotions and feelings, typically spoken in the first person perspective. But before we can jump into writing lyrical poetry, we need to understand a new term, and that is meter. No, I don't mean the metric system. I mean meter, which is the basic rhyming structure of a verse or line in a poem. The meter of a poem focuses on the number of syllables in a line and how they are stressed or not. The most common meters used in lyrical poetry are iambic, trochaic, pyrrhic, anapestic, dactylic, and spondaic. Yes, they are real words. Let me explain. Iambic meter includes 2 syllables, the first one being unstressed while the second is stressed. For example, the word above. The first syllable sounds shorter than meaning that is unstressed, while the second syllable bove is longer or stressed. The next meter is trochaic, which is the reverse, long followed by a short. The example here is beauty. Bu is long and T is short. Next is pyrrhic, which is 2 unstressed syllables. Our example is when the or in the. Both phrases incorporate 2 monosyllabic words with short or unstressed sounds. Fourth, we have anapestic.
It could have been pesto here.
Yeah, it could have been... Hey, wait a minute.
I didn't mean nothing.
What am I? Some kind of plump domestic fowl here to amuse you? That's it! I'll give you a chicken. Here's your...
Anapestic involves 3 syllables, the first 2 being short and the last being long. Take the phrase, I must finish my journey alone. The syllables fin, jour, and lone are stressed while the 2 syllables coming before each of them are short. Fifth is dactylic, which has its root in the Greek word for finger.
I've got a finger for you, Trebek.
It is the pyrrhic's opposite, having 1 long syllable followed by 2 shorter syllables, like in the phrase, in his coat. That first word, or syllable, is long compared to the following 2. Finally, we jump back to the 2-syllable meter with spondaic, with both syllables being stressed, in the phrase, filthy mudblood, or boo-hoo. There are also different types of lyrical poems to sort through. There's the ode, which was discussed last month, but there are other forms as well, such as the elegy, a poem expressing sorrow or loss, often used for funerals. Then there's the sonnet, which is one of my personal favorites, and we'll talk about that one next month in detail. And of course, a monologue, where a single speaker addresses their poetry to a specific audience. There are also key elements that must be included in a lyrical poem. These elements include accessibility, brevity, emotionality, form, imagery and metaphor, musicality, spontaneity, and subjectivity. Starting with accessibility, you want your poem to be understood by a reader, any reader for that matter. There needs to be a context for why the poem exists. Don't use obscure language or make the subject matter too confusing. Brevity means that the poem is short and to the point. Haiku, for example, only have 3 lines and 17 syllables, while sonnets have 14 lines with 10 syllables each. Most lyrical poems are no longer than 60 lines. And this isn't some sweeping concerto, this is a quick song to evoke an emotional response in the moment. This is where emotionality comes into play. Lyrical poems often explore the internal intentions and intimations of the poet's heart. It is an opportunity for vulnerability from the poet and explicit trust in the reader to understand and sympathize with whatever that emotion might be. Next up, musicality. Lyrical poems are songs, remember? Even if you don't have any musical bone in your body, there is a part of you that connects with music and may draw inspiration from the songs and bands and genres that you listen to now. It doesn't mean you need to make your poem be accompanied by instrumentation, but it does mean your poem should be pleasing and enjoyable to read. This ties back to the topic of subjectivity. Write a poem that is going to appeal to you first and foremost, because the lyrics, lines, and rhymes are going to be yours. Spontaneity. This is a little harder to describe. Allow yourself to play with the words and emotions that you're using, and allow yourself to be surprised by what you write. Before you can let your readers see your vulnerability, be willing to be vulnerable with yourself. With that said, here are 5 tips for writing your lyrical poem. Tip number 1, study poetry. This sounds ridiculously obvious, but just hear me out. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Reading is breathing in while writing is breathing out. And if you want to be able to breathe out poetry, you need to read it and you need to study it. This isn't to copy or emulate style or word choices, but rather to immerse yourself in the content that you hope to add through your own writing. Tip number 2, be playful. Lyrical poetry relies on playfulness, which allows you to experiment with style and substance in your poetry. Play with words, with rhyming, and with the emotional elements and circumstances that you want to incorporate. These are the elements that can surprise you the most. So, allow yourself the room to experiment and have fun with what you're writing. Tip number 3, focus on personal experience. Your poetry is personal. You are the only authority on your emotions, your feelings, and your experiences. But why would anyone want to read about someone else's emotional experiences? But that is exactly what happens when we read poetry. We are getting this vulnerable, intimate insight into someone else's experiences. While your poetry should focus on your lived experiences and emotions, your poems will likely resonate with readers in ways that only they can connect with. Tip number 4, form and language develop together. Again, this goes back towards experimentation, specifically in how you structure your poem and the word choices affecting that poem. This means changing the kinds of stanzas you're building or where you break your lines with or without punctuation. This changes up the rhythm and the flow of words. Line lengths can also impact the poem as it's read out loud, and believe me, poetry is meant to be read out loud. And final tip, tip number 5, be spontaneous now and revise later. Don't worry about your first draft being perfect. It's not. Just put pen to paper, write something down, and let yourself cut loose. Let your feelings take over. When I've written poetry in the past, I usually did it when I was listening to music that fueled and reinforced the emotions I was dealing with, whether from a bad breakup or anger at some injustice or a friend's betrayal, whatever it was. I waited until after the poem was written before I took time to revise what I wrote. Get the feelings out of your head and onto paper. That way you get the emotional catharsis that you need, and then, and only then, once it's out of your head, go back with fresh eyes and make tweaks and changes as necessary. So that's it. That's the lesson on lyrical poetry. If you pay attention to all of the elements that need to be put in place and follow the 5 steps I've listed, then you'll be well on your way to creating something beautiful and heartfelt. Now, before I let you go, here's a challenge for you. Write a lyrical poem with rhyme, stressing the syllables, using the meter options discussed in this video. Once you have it written, post it in the video comments, or you can send it to me on Instagram or X at gkj_publishing, or you can email me a copy to gkjpublishing@gmail.com. I'd love to see what you come up with and offer feedback. Hey, thanks for watching. If you'd like more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and click the bell for notifications when new content is released. Make sure to tune in next week for my live stream, and I look forward to next month's episode featuring an interview with fantasy author Rylo Kin and new book recs from podcast host Heather Pantoja. See you then.